They sent a letter that said they owned my land like it was a clerical error someone couldn't be bothered to check. 3 sentences later, they came back with men in cheap tactical vests acting like deputies. And by the time the mailbox lay in splinters at my feet, I had to decide whether history was something you protected gently or something you gripped with both hands. I gripped with both. My name is Eli Mercer. Silver Ridge has been in my family since my grandfather bought 3 scrubby acres and an old pump in 1962. We didn't inherit a flag. We inherited chores and a way of keeping promises. Land for us was breakfast and the sound of chickens and the memory of hands that set fence posts, ordinary things that become sacred when your name is written on the deed. The HOA letter looked official, neat font. A seal that gleamed under the sun, claiming our property fell under some new community oversight. 2 days after it arrived, men with clipboards and those smug vests rolled up my driveway. They talked about covenants and fines like it was paper that could shove a person off their land. Vance, their leader, barked lines about final notice. A woman at the back, she called herself Marjorie, watched like someone enjoying the play. I called the sheriff, but not before I asked them 2 simple questions. Who gave you authority? And where's the paperwork? They fumbled. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I could have spent the day chasing signatures and lawyers, and later, I did take the paper route, but in the moment, I'm a guy who remembers his grandfather mortgaging a boat for fence wire. You don't stand up for a story by being quiet. I'm not proud of how fast the anger can sharpen, but I am proud of what it turned into. A plan that respected life and made a point. I didn't booby-trap the place like a movie. I used a farmer's cunning. I moved a few boards, set a hidden rut, stacked hay in a way that would be messy to stumble through. None of it was meant to maim, only to make walking across someone else's land uncomfortably memorable. They came back in a black SUV, sun in their eyes, attitude in their pockets. Vance stepped out and tried the same line about seizing property. Marjorie smiled like she knew what power looked like, the steady smile people use to hide whether they are afraid. I told them to leave. They told me to move my things. It was the sort of standoff that will either be forgotten or remembered depending on who blinks first. I fired a warning, a single shot into the dirt. Not to hurt, but to speak. Sound is a language. It tells people how serious you are in a way words sometimes can't. Vance flinched. The air changed. These men were counting on fear to do the work they couldn't prove in court. You're out of line, Marjorie said, voice thin as paper, when one of her men went tumbling into a hay pile. This is community work. We're trying to keep property values up. There was that phrase, property values, like it was a reason that could tidy everything. You won't bully us, I said. We aren't for sale. There was a moment when Marjorie stepped closer, clipboard lifted like a shield. We'll be back with a court order, she said, as if giving a calendar date would make the law personal. I told her to bring it. She didn't like the sound of that challenge. People who threaten with dates are sometimes bluffing. Sheriff Tom Ridges arrived about then, a man who once fished with my father and who knows my daughter's name. Tom has a patience that looks like inaction until it is action. You don't know he was working until the problem is smaller. He asked for identification, and those men who had looked so confident couldn't hand him a packet of authority that made sense. There was a short, loud scuffle, and then the click of plastic cuffs. Marjorie demanded to speak to a lawyer. Tom told her to get one and told her the next steps: calm, precise, public. The lawsuit was deliberate and slow, the kind of thing that makes you appreciate the parts of justice that are boring: property deeds, chain of title, tax receipts tied into a history. We brought old pictures of fences and receipts for seed and hay. The other side had signature sheets of paper, but their signatures weren't backed by law. The judge read the documents, made notes, and in the end the court said that no community group can generate enforcement like a municipal agency. The HOA charter was invalidated, and the men who pretended to be officers faced charges for impersonation and trespass. The legal victory felt like a necessary clearing, practical and a little flat, not the cinematic ending people expect. Back at Silver Ridge, the fallout was quieter. A neighbor named Ruth brought a blackberry pie and stayed long enough to talk about nothing important, which is a bomb people give each other after something big. Carlos from the next farm checked the fence line and stayed to help rebuild the mailbox. Community isn't a phrase, it's a series of small acts. When Marjorie lost the hearings, some in town said she was a bully undone. Others said she was a person who got carried away with the power she could pretend to hold. Both views live in the same town and trade stories over diner coffee. I won't sugarcoat my motives. Pride kept my chin up that week. So did love for a place shaped by hands I knew. I wanted my children to grow into a habit of stewardship, not entitlement. Is that noble? Maybe sometimes. Is it selfish? Sometimes that too. Real life is a mix, and my sleep after the trials told me I had been on the honorable side of messy. There was a small, ridiculous moment a week later. A kid from down the road found the splintered mailbox and shoved a paper airplane through the gap, writing "Not today" on it. I kept that airplane. We rebuilt the box, painted it red, and nailed a plaque with my grandfather's initials. It felt less like a monument and more like a vow. We'll keep what was entrusted to us. The night before the hearing, my partner, Maya, sat with me on the porch and said something simple. "Do what makes you sleep," she said. That line sank in. There were times I wanted to prove the world wrong because I was stubborn. There were times I wanted to prove them wrong because I was scared they might be right. Maya reminded me that courage without peace is only noise. I slept, and that night I dreamed of my grandfather hammering stakes into the wind. People in town still argue about how I handled it. Some say I escalated too quickly. Others say I saved a place that otherwise would have been papered into someone else's narrative. That's okay. If your life is a story, you want people arguing over your ending, it means you've mattered enough to provoke opinion. So tell me, were we right to stand? Was the law already sufficient, or did it need a nudge? Leave a comment, share your story, and let's talk about what community even means when property lines get messy. What sticks with me is not the courtroom victory, but the fact that ordinary people can make a line that others respect or eventually accept. Paper is persuasive, but it's human memory and interaction that give paper its weight. When someone tries to turn your life into a checkbox, you have options: litigate, accommodate, or stand. Standing isn't inherently noble. It's simply a choice that reveals who you are. If you've ever been pushed by neighbors, by paperwork, or by a group that thought authority could be rented with a crisp signature, tell me how you would have acted. Was the law enough? Would you have stood? Drop a comment with the truth. I don't want applause, I want the kind of honest noise where people disagree and learn from each other. That's where things start to change. This is Silver Ridge, a stubborn piece of land, stubborn people, and a week when paper tried to be destiny. We stood for the ordinary parts of life, the chores, the coffee, the fence posts, because sometimes those ordinary parts are the only proof you've got that something matters. I still fix fences on Sundays. I still drink coffee on the porch. And sometimes I walk down to that mailbox and touch the little plaque and think about how we pass things on, not just the land, but the way we stand for it. If you like this story, share it with someone who loves the messy, human kind of justice, not the TV kind, but the kind that happens on porches and in courtrooms and over blackberry pie. Drop a comment, hit subscribe if you want more true-to-life stories told like someone telling you over coffee, and tell me where you're watching from. I read the comments, and we learn from the friction.